Hello, and welcome back to COCO Gossip, your number one source for the exclusive reports and insider theories that get to the real truth behind the headlines. Today, we have a story that is so shocking, so deeply personal, and so profoundly treacherous it will change the way you see the Brown family forever. We've all watched the slow, painful disintegration of the family. We've all seen the tears, the arguments, and the financial turmoil. But we are here today to tell you that what you saw on screen was just the tip of the iceberg. We begin with an image many of you will remember, a close-up on a beautiful sterling silver necklace, a delicate Celtic knot design given from one sister wife to another in an early season of the show. It was a symbol of their bond, of their intertwined lives, of a sisterhood they claimed would last forever. Now, cut to a stark, flimsy piece of paper, a pawnshop receipt dated just weeks after that gift was given. The same Celtic knot necklace, described in cold, transactional detail, sold for a mere fraction of its emotional and monetary value. A gift is meant to be a symbol of love, a token of affection held dear. But for Robyn Brown, as the evidence will overwhelmingly show, it was just another asset to liquidate. Before we dive into the mountain of evidence, the leaked documents, and the exclusive testimony that blows this entire scandal wide open, please take a moment to hit that like button. If you're as passionate about getting to the truth as we are, make sure you subscribe to COCO Gossip and ring that notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single update on this story, because the paper trail of betrayal we are about to reveal is longer and darker than you can possibly imagine. The story begins not in a television studio or on a sprawling plot of undeveloped land in Flagstaff, but in the sterile, quiet offices of a law firm. As the financial separation between Kody, Janelle, and Mary began to formalize, a process known as discovery was initiated. This is the legal phase where both sides are required to exchange information, turn over documents, and provide a full, transparent accounting of their financial lives. Janelle, ever the practical and business-minded one, had hired a sharp and thorough legal team. Their initial goal was simple: to untangle the notoriously messy and opaque knot of the Brown family finances. They were looking for hidden bank accounts, undisclosed assets, and any information that would help ensure Janelle received a fair and equitable settlement after decades of contributing to the family pot. As part of this process, subpoenas were sent out. These are legal demands for information, and Janelle's team cast a wide net. They subpoenaed bank records, credit card statements, property deeds, and in a move that some might have considered a long shot, they sent subpoenas to dozens of local businesses in the areas the Browns have lived: Las Vegas and, more recently, Flagstaff. This included pawn shops and cash for gold establishments. At first, the returns were unremarkable, but then a thick envelope arrived from a chain of pawn shops with locations in both Nevada and Arizona. Inside was a stack of receipts, a meticulously kept log of transactions under the name Robyn Brown. Janelle's lead attorney, a seasoned professional who thought she had seen everything, later told an inside source that her blood ran cold as she began to connect the dots. The first receipt that caught her eye was for that very Celtic knot necklace. The date of sale was just 2 weeks after the episode aired, where Janelle had given it to Robyn for her birthday. The payout was a paltry $75. It was a gut punch. But it was only the beginning. As the legal team cross-referenced the dates on the pawnshop records with birthdays, anniversaries, and Christmases within the Brown family, a sickening pattern began to emerge. Item after item, gift after gift that had been given to Robyn by Janelle over the course of more than a decade appeared on these receipts. A custom-made bracelet with the birthstones of all the family's children, a gift from Janelle to celebrate the adoption of Robyn's kids. Sold. A pair of vintage turquoise earrings Janelle had found at an Arizona trading post, knowing how much Robyn professed to love Southwestern jewelry. Pawned for cash 6 days after Christmas. A first edition copy of a book Janelle had painstakingly tracked down, believing it would be a meaningful and personal gift for the family's supposed book lover, sold to a rare book dealer connected to the pawn shop. The betrayal wasn't just occasional, it was systematic. It was a secondary income stream built on the foundation of sentimental gestures. While Janelle was choosing these gifts with care, thinking she was strengthening the bonds of their plural family, Robyn was apparently assessing their resale value. The legal team knew this was more than just a financial discrepancy. It was a bombshell that exposed the entire loving sisterhood as a sham. They needed more than just the receipts. They needed to understand the human element behind these cold transactions. Their investigation led them to a woman we'll call Brenda, a former employee of the Las Vegas pawn shop that Robyn frequented the most. Brenda, who had since moved on from the industry, was initially hesitant to speak, but when she was presented with a subpoena for a deposition and realized the gravity of the situation, she agreed to tell her story. Brenda's testimony, according to sources who have seen the sealed deposition transcripts, was absolutely devastating. She recognized Robyn immediately from the show. She recalled that Robyn was a regular, coming in every few months, always alone, always quiet and discreet. She never made a scene or drew attention to herself. She was, in Brenda's words, all business. Brenda testified that Robyn would unwrap the items from a soft cloth, her demeanor never betraying any sentimentality. There was no hesitation, no last look at a cherished memory. She would simply place the item on the counter and ask, "How much can I get for this?" Brenda remembered the birthstone bracelet specifically. She said she even commented on how beautiful and personal it was, and Robyn had simply shrugged, replying, "It's just not my style." Brenda stated under oath that Robyn's visits often correlated with the holidays. She would see her in late January, and again a week or two after Mother's Day, or a few weeks after her birthday in October. It was a predictable cycle. The influx of gifts from the family was followed by an outflow of those same gifts for cash. The deposition painted a chilling picture. While on camera, Robyn was performing the role of the devoted sister wife, weeping over family unity and pleading for everyone to stay together. She was simultaneously and methodically erasing the physical symbols of that unity. Each gift from Janelle wasn't a memory to be treasured. It was an invoice to be cashed. The paper trail was undeniable, a chronicle of deceit written on carbon copy receipts. The lawyers now had a pattern, a witness, and a mountain of evidence. They had proof that for years, Robyn had been converting Janelle's love and generosity into cold, hard cash, all while publicly presenting herself as the emotional core of the family. The financial implications were significant, but the emotional fraud was staggering. This evidence would become the linchpin of Janelle's legal strategy, not just to secure her financial future, but to expose the truth of the one-sided sisterhood she had been trapped in for over a decade. The stage was now set for a confrontation, but no one could have predicted the sheer audacity of the defense Robyn was about to mount. When confronted with this undeniable evidence during a formal deposition, the reaction was classic Robyn. The tears started immediately, not tears of shame or remorse, but tears of indignant victimhood. Her voice, thick with emotion, trembled as she wove a heart-wrenching tale of desperation and maternal sacrifice. This was the desperate times defense. She claimed, between dramatic sobs, that she had been forced into these actions. She painted a picture of herself as a destitute mother, abandoned by a financially negligent Kody, left alone to worry about how she would feed her precious children. "You don't understand," she allegedly cried, looking directly at Janelle's attorney. There were times Kody wasn't providing enough. The money from the show, it didn't always come on time. There were bills to pay, mouths to feed. Janelle has her own income. She has her own security. She has no idea what it's like to look in the pantry and see nothing but canned soup and ramen noodles and know you have to put food on the table for your babies. I did what any mother would do. I sacrificed. I sold the only things of value I had. She portrayed the selling of these gifts not as an act of betrayal, but as a secret, noble burden she carried for the good of her children. She claimed she was too ashamed to ask for help, too proud to admit to the other wives that Kody's promises of financial security were hollow. "Every time I sold one of those pieces," she tearfully insisted, "a piece of my own heart went with it. I loved those gifts. I loved what they represented. But I love my children more. I had to choose between a necklace and a gallon of milk for Solomon. I had to choose between a bracelet and shoes for Ariella. What choice did I have?" It was a masterful performance, designed to elicit sympathy and reframe her deception as a mother's desperate want-to-want. She was not a grifter, she was a survivor. She wasn't betraying Janelle, she was protecting her children from a reality she was too embarrassed to share. She was, once again, the ultimate victim of the family's dysfunction. A martyr secretly selling her treasures to keep her children from starving while the other wives remained blissfully unaware of her plight. For a fleeting moment, one could almost feel a sliver of sympathy. The Brown family's finances have always been a chaotic mess, and Kody's financial decision-making has been questionable at best. The idea that Robyn, despite her large house, might have faced cash flow problems wasn't entirely outside the realm of possibility. Her story, delivered with practiced, tearful conviction, was designed to be just plausible enough. She was banking on the power of her tears and the narrative of the struggling mother to obscure the cold, hard facts on the pawnshop receipts. She was attempting to transform a mountain of documented deceit into a molehill of maternal desperation. But what Robyn didn't know was that Janelle's legal team had not just subpoenaed the pawnshops. They had also subpoenaed her personal bank statements and credit card records for the exact same periods. And the story those documents told was not one of a mother struggling to buy groceries. It was a story of lavish, consistent, and unaccountable spending. The desperate times defense was about to be systematically and brutally dismantled, not by testimony or opinion, but by the irrefutable mathematics of her own hypocrisy. The tears were about to dry up under the harsh glare of financial reality, and the image of the desperate mother was about to be replaced by the portrait of a calculated emotional fraud. The scene, as described by insiders, was one of pure legal drama. In the deposition room, with Robyn having just concluded her heart-wrenching monologue about choosing between jewelry and milk for her children, there was a heavy silence. Her attorney looked on with a supportive expression. Robyn dabbed her eyes with a tissue, the picture of a wronged woman. Then Janelle's lead attorney, Laura, slid a thick binder across the table. "Mrs. Brown," she began, her voice calm and devoid of emotion, "I'd like to direct your attention to your personal bank and credit card statements from the periods you just described as desperate." The color drained from Robyn's face. The performance was over. Laura opened the binder. Page after page contained meticulously highlighted entries, a damning ledger that directly contradicted every tearful claim Robyn had just made. The strategy was simple and devastating, to juxtapose Robyn's claims of poverty with the reality of her spending. Laura began with the first item, the Celtic knot necklace, sold in October for $75. "You stated you sold this necklace, a birthday gift, because you were worried about buying groceries for the week," Laura said. "Is that correct?" Robyn nodded meekly. "Then can you please explain this charge?" Laura pointed to an entry on a credit card statement dated 2 days after the pawnshop transaction. "A charge for $350 at a day spa in Las Vegas. The Queen for a Day package, I believe. Was that to relieve the stress of your financial desperation?" The questions continued, each one a precise, calculated blow. "Let's move to the Christmas after you moved to Flagstaff. According to the pawnshop records, on January 10th, you sold a pair of turquoise earrings given to you by Janelle for $120. You claimed this was necessary for essentials. Yet your bank statements show that on January 8th, just 2 days prior, you made an online purchase from a designer handbag retailer for over $1,200. Was a new luxury handbag an essential for the children?" They went through it, item by item, lie by lie. The custom birthstone bracelet, pawned for a few $100s, was followed by a weekend trip to a Sedona resort with a friend. The sale of a sentimental locket coincided with a shopping spree at Victoria's Secret and other high-end boutiques at the local mall. There was no evidence of a mother struggling. The record showed a woman living comfortably, indulging in regular, non-essential luxury spending. The grocery purchases were there, of course, but they were from Whole Foods and other premium grocers, and they were dwarfed by the expenditures on personal luxuries. There was no surplus of funds being funneled into savings or investments for the children's future. There was a surplus being spent on Robyn herself. The legal team demonstrated that the cash from the pawnshop sales was not being used to bridge a gap between paychecks or to put food on the table. It was being treated as a secret slush fund, disposable income for indulgences that she likely didn't want appearing on a shared family credit card statement or being questioned by Kody or the other wives. It was her private, off-the-books spending money, financed by the betrayal of her sister wife. The most damning part of the reveal was the sheer scale and consistency of it all. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment during a particularly tough month. This was a sustained, long-term pattern of behavior spanning years. It was a lifestyle choice. She would accept the gifts with smiles and hugs for the cameras and her family, and then, when the coast was clear, she would drive to a pawn shop and convert those symbols of love into cash for her personal use. The Desperate Times defense had not just been disproven, it had been annihilated. The evidence showed not a struggling mother, but a deeply deceptive individual who had leveraged the goodwill and genuine affection of Janelle for personal financial gain. Robyn was left with no explanation. The tears stopped. According to the source, she simply sat there, silent and exposed, the binder of her own financial records laid out before her like an indictment. The emotional fraud was now a matter of documented fact. This revelation would have profound consequences, not just in the court of public opinion, but in a court of law, where a judge was about to weigh this pattern of behavior in the final division of the family's assets. The betrayal was no longer just a personal wound for Janelle. It was about to become a very expensive liability for Robyn. The transition from the discovery phase and depositions to the final arbitration hearing was stark. The matter was being settled not in a public courtroom, but in a private setting with a retired family court judge acting as the arbitrator. But make no mistake, the proceedings were just as serious, the stakes just as high, and the judgment would be just as binding. Our sources, who have obtained detailed accounts of this final hearing, describe an atmosphere thick with tension. Janelle was reportedly stoic, her face set but calm. She had played her hand, her legal team had laid out the facts, and now she was simply waiting for the conclusion. She was flanked by her lawyers, a silent, confident presence. On the other side of the table sat Robyn and Kody. Kody, as you can imagine, was a storm cloud of simmering rage, his body language radiating frustration and disbelief that they were even there. But it was Robyn who was the most changed. The tears were gone, replaced by a sullen, resentful expression. The mask of the perpetual victim had slipped, revealing a woman cornered by undeniable facts. Her legal team, now on the back foot, attempted to argue a very narrow technical defense. Their position was simple. A gift once given is the legal property of the recipient. Robyn had the absolute right to do whatever she wanted with her own property. Whether she kept it in a jewelry box, wore it every day, or sold it for cash was her decision and hers alone. They argued that Janelle's feelings about the gifts were emotionally relevant but legally immaterial. They tried to paint Janelle's legal team's focus on the pawned items as a vindictive and petty tactic, a way to publicly shame Robyn and distract from the real financial issues at hand. "This is a fishing expedition designed to assassinate Mrs. Brown's character," her lawyer argued. "My client was in a complex multi-person marriage with a convoluted financial structure. She made decisions with her personal property that she felt were necessary at the time. To retroactively attach malicious intent to these transactions is a gross overreach and has no bearing on the equitable division of the family's primary assets, such as real estate and shared business accounts." They were trying to build a firewall to isolate the pawnshop betrayal from the larger financial settlement, arguing it was a separate personal issue, not a legal one. But Janelle's team had a much more powerful and holistic argument. They contended that this was not about the legal definition of a gift. This was about a pattern of conduct that revealed the fundamental nature of the partnership itself. They argued that the Brown family, for legal purposes, operated as a de facto partnership, a complex entity where finances, assets, and labor were supposedly pooled for the benefit of the collective. Within such a partnership, there exists a concept known as a fiduciary duty, a duty to act in good faith, to be honest, and not to act in a way that undermines the other partners. Janelle's lawyer, Laura, delivered a closing argument that sources say left the room in stunned silence. "This case," she began, "is about more than just the division of property. It is about the dissolution of a partnership that was built, at least on one side, on a foundation of lies. For over a decade, my client, Janelle Brown, acted in good faith. She contributed her income, her labor, and her emotional energy to what she believed was a unified family. She gave gifts to Robyn Brown as symbols of that faith, as tangible representations of a sisterhood she thought was real. What the evidence has conclusively shown is that this faith was not reciprocated. Robyn Brown did not see a sister, she saw a mark. She did not see a gift. She saw an asset to be liquidated for her own secret, personal use." Laura continued, weaving the financial data and the pawnshop receipts into a single damning narrative. "The defense claims this is about character assassination. We argue it is about character revelation. The pattern of behavior, accepting a gift with one hand and selling it with the other, then lying about the reasons with a tearful, fabricated story of desperation, is not just bad form. It is evidence of bad faith. It demonstrates a long-standing practice of deception and financial secrecy. It proves that while Janelle was contributing to the family pot, Robyn was creating her own secret slush fund financed by the very symbols of their supposed bond. This wasn't a partnership of equals, it was a long con. And we are asking this court to recognize that reality in its final judgment. The law must not reward this kind of profound and sustained deception. The judge, a woman with decades of experience in contentious family law cases, listened to all of this impassively. After the closing arguments, she took a recess to review the evidence one final time. When she returned, she began to speak, and her words would bring the entire charade crashing down. I have reviewed all the financial statements, the depositions, and the arguments presented by both sides, she started, her voice measured and authoritative. Let me begin by addressing the defendant's argument regarding the nature of the gifts. It is unequivocally true that a gift, once legally transferred, becomes the property of the recipient. Mrs. Robyn Brown was within her legal rights to sell these items. Had this been a single instance or even a few isolated incidents, this court would likely disregard it as a matter of personal conflict, not legal adjudication. She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. However, what the plaintiff's counsel has presented is not an isolated incident. It is a deeply entrenched multi-year pattern of behavior, and in the context of dissolving a long-term domestic partnership, a pattern of behavior is not only relevant, it is often the most crucial piece of evidence in determining an equitable outcome. The judge looked directly at Robyn. This court is tasked with dividing assets accumulated during a partnership. But to do so fairly, the court must understand the nature of that partnership. The plaintiff, Mrs. Janelle Brown, has operated under the assumption that she was in a good faith partnership. The evidence shows that you, Mrs. Robyn Brown, were not. While the term emotional fraud is not a formal legal doctrine, the concept it describes, a sustained course of deceit that causes tangible and intangible harm to a partner, is very real to this court. You performed the role of a loving sister-wife, a partner in a shared enterprise. You accepted the benefits of that role, including financial support and tangible gifts meant to symbolize the emotional bonds of that partnership. And then you secretly and systematically converted those symbols into cash for your own personal undisclosed use, while simultaneously claiming poverty and desperation, a claim thoroughly disproven by your own financial records. The judge picked up a copy of a pawnshop receipt. This is not just about a necklace. This is about a mindset that views a relationship as a transaction, a mindset that sees a symbol of love and calculates its resale value. This behavior speaks to a fundamental lack of good faith that this court believes has permeated the financial and emotional dynamics of this partnership for a very long time. It establishes a credibility deficit that is frankly insurmountable. It forces the court to question everything you have presented regarding your financial needs and contributions. Then came the hammer blow. Therefore, this court finds that a standard equal division of the disputed marital assets would not be just or equitable. To do so would be to reward a pattern of bad faith and deceit. The actions of Mrs. Robyn Brown have created a situation where the trust, which is the bedrock of any partnership, was illusory on her part. The judge then laid out the specifics of the judgment. First, the matter of the pawned gifts. While the gifts cannot be returned, she declared, their value can be. The court has reviewed an appraisal of the likely original retail value of the items in question, which totals approximately $12,000. This is a conservative estimate. This amount will be credited directly to Mrs. Janelle Brown from Mrs. Robyn Brown and Mr. Kody Brown's share of the final asset pool. This is, in effect, a clawback. The money you receive from these sales, which was born of deceit, will be returned to the partner from whom it was deceitfully taken. $12,000 was just the beginning. The judge then turned to the larger, more significant assets, specifically the disputed equity in the Coyote Pass property and other shared investment accounts that Janelle's income had heavily contributed to over the years. Given the demonstrated pattern of financial secrecy and bad faith on the part of Mrs. Robyn Brown, This court lacks confidence that a 50-50 division of the remaining assets would be equitable. The evidence suggests a long-term siphoning of emotional and, through these actions, financial resources from the partnership. Therefore, the court rules that the disputed assets will be divided 65% in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Janelle Brown, and 35% in favor of the defendants. This adjustment is a direct consequence of the finding of bad faith, a recognition that one partner was operating honestly while the other was not. The financial devastation for Robyn and Kody was immense. Not only had her secret slush fund been exposed and clawed back, but her actions had directly resulted in them losing a significant portion of the very assets she was so desperate to control. The judgment was a complete and total vindication for Janelle. The judge didn't just give her money, she validated her experience. The ruling was a legal declaration that Janelle was the one who had been wronged, that her instincts had been right, and that the sisterhood she had tried so hard to believe in was, in fact, a one-sided farce. Robyn's petty secret betrayals had cost her and Kody hundreds of thousands of dollars in the final settlement. It was the ultimate karmic irony. In her greedy pursuit of a few $100s here and there, she had lost a fortune. Her long-term emotional fraud had finally been presented with a bill, and it was a steep one. So let's take a moment to process the sheer scale of this betrayal. This wasn't a crime of passion or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a cold, calculated, long-term strategy. Imagine looking a person in the eye, someone who is supposed to be your sister, your family. You've chosen a gift for them, spent your money and your time, wrapped it with care, and given it to them with love. Believing it will be a cherished symbol of your connection, you watch them smile, you receive a hug, you hear them say how much they love it, and all the while, in the back of their mind, they are already calculating its pawn value. They are waiting for the right moment to drive to a shop, slide it across a counter to a stranger, and trade your love for a handful of cash to go buy a designer purse or get a pedicure. She smiled while accepting the gifts and then sold them for cash behind Janelle's back. Can you imagine a more personal and petty betrayal? This story reveals everything. It's the smoking gun that exposes the truth that so many viewers have suspected for years. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe this is the ultimate proof of Robyn's manipulative nature? What do you think Kody knew? Thank you for joining us here at COCO Gossip. If you want to stay on top of this story and get more exclusive reports and insider theories, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. We'll see you next time. Will.